Number 4468 Mallard is a London and North Eastern Railway Class A44-6-2 Pacific steam locomotive built at Doncaster, England in 1938. It is historically significant as the holder of the world speed record for steam locomotives. The A4 class was designed by Sir Nigel Gresley to power high-speed streamlined trains. The wind tunnel-tested, aerodynamic body and high power allowed the class to reach speeds of over 100 miles per hour, although in everyday service it was relatively uncommon for any steam-hauled service in the UK to reach even 90 miles per hour, much less 100. Mallard covered almost 1.5 million miles before it was retired in 1963. It was restored to working order in the 1980s, but has not operated since, apart from hauling some specials between York and Scarborough in July 1986 and a couple of runs between York and Harrogate Leeds around Easter 1987. Mallard is now part of the National Collection at the United Kingdom's National Railway Museum in York. On the weekend of July 5, 2008, Mallard was taken outside for the first time in years and displayed beside the three other A4s that are resident in the UK, thus reuniting them for the first time since preservation. It departed the Museum for Locomotion, the NRM's out base at Childon on 23 June 2010, where it was a static exhibit, until it was hauled back to York on July 19, 2011 and put back on display in its original location in the Great Hall. The locomotive is 70 ft long and weighs 165 tons, including the tender. It is painted LNER garter blue with red wheels and steel rims. Record: Mallard is the holder of the world speed record for steam locomotives at 125.88 mph. The record was achieved on July 3, 1938 on the slight downward grade of Stoke Bank south of Grantham on the East Coast Main Line, and the highest speed was recorded at milepost 90 1/4, between Little Bitham and Essendon. It broke the German 002's 1936 record of 124.5 mph. The record attempt was carried out during the trials of a new quick-acting brake. Mallard was the perfect vehicle for such an endeavour. The A4 class was designed for sustained 100+ mph running, and Mallard was one of a few of the class that were built with a double chimney and double coil-cap blast pipe, which made for improved drafting and better exhaust flow at speed. The A4's three-cylinder design made for stability at speed, and the large 6 ft driving wheels meant that the maximum revolutions per minute was within the capabilities of the technology of the day. Mallard was 4 months old, meaning that it was sufficiently broken in to run freely, but not overly worn. Selected to crew the locomotive on its record attempt were driver Joseph Duddington and fireman Thomas Bray. In the words of Rob Gwynn, assistant curator of rail vehicles at the National Railway Museum, Duddington, then aged 61, climbed into the cab, turned his cap around, and drove Mallard into the history books. He had 27 years on the footplate, and had once driven the Scarborough Flyer for 144 miles at over 74 miles per hour, considered at the time to be the highest speed ever maintained by steam in the UK. The locomotive had previously had problems with the big end bearing for the middle cylinder, so the big end was fitted with a stink bomb of aniseed oil which would be released if the bearing overheated. Shortly after attaining the record speed, the middle big end did overheat and Mallard had to limp onwards to Peterborough. It then travelled to Doncaster for repair. This had been foreseen by the publicity department, who had many pictures taken for the press, in case Mallard did not make it back to King's Cross. The Ivet Atlantic that replaced Mallard at Peterborough was only just in sight when the head of publicity started handing out the pictures. Stoke Bank has a gradient of between 178 and 200. Mallard, pulling a dynamometer car and 6 coaches, topped Stoke Summit at 75 mph and accelerated downhill. The speeds at the end of each mile from the summit were recorded as 87 1/2, 96 1/2, 104, 107, 111 1/2, 116 and 119 mph. Half-mile readings after that gave 120 3/4, 122 1/2, 123, 124 1/4 and finally 125 mph. the speed recorded by instruments in the dynamometer car reached a momentary maximum of 126 mph. On arrival at King's Cross, driver Joe Duddington and Inspector Sid Jenkins were quoted as saying that they thought a speed of 130 mph would have been possible if the train had not had to slow for the junctions it ascended in. In addition, at the time of the run there was a permanent way restriction to 15 mph just north of Grantham, which slowed the train as they sought to build up maximum speed before reaching the high-speed downhill section just beyond Stog Tunnel. On July 3, 2013, Mallard celebrated 75 years since achieving the world speed record, and to help commemorate this date all 6 surviving Class A4 locomotives were brought together around the turntable in the Great Hall of the National Railway Museum at York for a 2-week great gathering. The visitors include 3 UK-based, privately owned engines and 4464 Bittern, 60007 Sir Nigel Gresley and 60009 Union of South Africa. Mallard's 2 internationally based sisters, 60008 Dwight D. Eisenhower and 60010 Dominion of Canada, were present after completing extensive transatlantic journeys, and undergoing cosmetic restoration at the NRM's workshops. Rival claims: Mallard's world record has never been officially exceeded by a steam locomotive, though the German Class 05 was at least very close. In 1936, 2 years before Mallard's run, 05A002 had reached 200.4 km/h between Hamburg and Berlin. Stoke Bank is long, straight and slightly downhill, whereas the 1936 run of 05A002 took place on a horizontal stretch of track. Unlike world records for cars and aircraft, there is no requirement for an average of 2 runs in both directions, and assistance from gradient or wind has always been acceptable in rail speed records. Also, unlike Mallard, 05A002 survived the attempt undamaged. On the other hand, its train was only 4 coaches long, whereas Mallard's train was 7 coaches. In terms of rival claims, Gresley and the LNER had just one serious attempt at the record, which was far from a perfect run with a 15 mph permanent way check just north of Grantham. Despite this, a record was set. Gresley planned to have another attempt in September 1939, but this was prevented by the outbreak of World War II. Before the record run on July 3, 1938, it was calculated that 130 mph was possible, and in fact driver Duddington and LNER Inspector Sid Jenkins both said they might well have achieved this figure had they not had to slow for the ascend-in junctions. There are reports of higher speeds from North American steam locomotives, although none was officially documented. Locomotives that are rumored to have exceeded the 126 mph record include the Pennsylvania Railroad's S1 prototype, which was unofficially clocked at 127.1 mph, and the Milwaukee Road Class F7. The Milwaukee Road had the fastest scheduled steam-powered passenger trains in the world. Both it and the Chicago and Northwestern had timetables requiring running in excess of 100 mph. It is believed that both railroads' locomotives exceeded 120 mph on a regular basis. However, to put matters into perspective, a letter from D.P. Morgan quoted in the Journal of the Stephenson Locomotive Society is worth quoting. "I'm afraid that you'll not find authenticated records covering maximum speeds attained by Pennsylvania Railroad 6100 or its related T1 duplex drive machine. The records were unofficial, the experiences related by engine crews, and with the passing of years many have either retired or died. Train timing on this side of the Atlantic is simply not of the quality or quantity you are familiar with in the UK or on the continent." The letter is also quoted in Peter Semon's Speed on the East Coast Main Line, who goes on to state that the accuracy of mileposts in the United States varies quite markedly. Often they are just attached to the nearest telegraph pole. In August 1940, a French mechanical engineer riding supercargo logged a report of a Chicago to St. Paul, Minnesota, Milwaukee-Hiawatha repeatedly exceeding 125 mph on mainline rail through Wisconsin. The report noted that the U.S. crews did not consider their speed remarkable, simply what they had to do to maintain the schedule. The report further noted that the engines were not specially prepared or checked, nor were any special actions taken above standard maintenance. Mallard, on the other hand, spent 2 weeks undergoing repairs following its record run. Thus, Mallard still officially holds the record. Plaques affixed to each side of the locomotive commemorate the feat. 1948 Locomotive Exchange Trials. In 1948, shortly after the formation of British Railways, the decision was taken to test locomotives from all of the former Big Four companies to find the best attributes of speed, power and efficiency with coal and water. There were two ways of testing and comparing locomotives, either at the Rugby Locomotive Testing Plant, which was not ready until late 1948, or by testing in the field itself. The results of these trials would be used to help design the British Railways standard design of locomotives. The express passenger locomotive designs which would be compared were, London Midland Region Princess Coronation Class, Eastern Region Class A4, Southern Region Merchant Navy Class and Western Region 6000 Class or King Class. 3 Gresley A4 locomotives were chosen to represent the Eastern Region, E22 Mallard, 60,033 Seagull and 60,034 Lord Farringdon. All of the locomotives had the Kilcap double-blast pipe chimney arrangement and were fresh from Doncaster works. Mallard had emerged from Doncaster with a fresh coat of post-war garter blue livery, stainless steel numbers 22 with a small E painted above them, new boiler and third tender of its career. E22 Mallard was used on June 8, 1948 on the Waterloo-Exeter route. Driver Marable took the famous A4 with a load of 481 tons tare, 505 tons full, the same that had been used on the previous trip by 35,018 British India Line. Mallard reached Clapham Junction in 6 minutes 57 seconds and Woking in 28 minutes 47 seconds. At Hook there were adverse signals, causing Mallard to slow to a crawl. Even so, Salisbury was reached in 108 minutes and 28 seconds. Despite the signals earlier, the train was only 5.5 minutes late. The net time was 95.5 minutes. Mallard failed after this trial and 60,033 Seagull took over. On June 10 Seagull achieved the run in 96 minutes 22 seconds, but had departed 3 minutes late, meaning Seagull had arrived with the same load 3.5 minutes early. For Mallard, the 1948 locomotive exchange trials were over, but Mallard returned to the Waterloo-Exeter line for a Locomotive Club of Great Britain rail tour in February 24, 1963. The Elizabethan was a flagship express that ran non-stop over the almost 400 miles between King's Cross and Edinburgh Waverley from 1953 to the mid-1960s. Until September 1961 it was steam-hauled. In its day it was the longest non-stop run in the world. 2 crews were needed for the 6.5-hour run. They were able to change over mid-journey by using a corridor tender, a special tender incorporating a narrow tunnel down one side and a corridor connection to the front coach of the train. Only a few locomotives other than Mallard had such a tender. The last steam-hauled Elizabethans ran on September 8, 1961. The northbound train was accompanied by photographers, journalists and performance recorders. Their outputs were uncoordinated and have only come to light over many years. Mallard hauled the train. The journalists wrote a valedictory piece in the Sunday Telegraph of September 10, 1961. This has recently been reproduced in a compendium of railway-related pieces from the Telegraph and Sunday Telegraph over the years. This names the driver and fireman from King's Cross to York as Harold Burkitt and John Thorne. They were replaced north of York by driver Bob Curry and fireman Alec Mackay. Chief Motive Power Inspector Bert Dixon stayed on the footplate for the whole trip. The photographers appear to have been from British Railways' own photography unit. Some of the photographs of the trip have survived in the Liverpool Street collection at the National Railway Museum. 4 of them were reproduced in a minority publication in 1971, one of them, showing driver Burkitt using the corridor tender, has been used in magazines since. Triangulation occurred in Railway magazine in 2013 when a log of the run was published, with narrative, taken from Railway Performance Society's archives. The original log was compiled by Mr. C. Hudson. The train arrived 3 minutes early after a run involving several speed checks and was interpreted as a credit to men, system and machine. Technical specifications. Mallard was released into traffic for the first time on March 3, 1938. It was the first A4 to be fitted with a coil-cap double blast pipe from new. This was one of the factors that led to its selection for the attempt on the world rail speed record in July of that year. Mallard wore a variety of liveries throughout its career. These were, Garter Blue as 4468, LNER Wartime Black from June 13, 1942, later Wartime Black with a tender marked as NE from October 21, 1943 as 22 with yellow small stenciled numbers, post-war Garter Blue with white and red lining from March 5, 1948 with stainless steel curbside number 22, British Railways Dark Blue as 60,022 from September 16, 1949, Brunswick Green from July 4, 1952 and its original LNER Garter Blue for preservation in 1963. The A4 class was built with streamlined valances, or side skirting, but this was removed during the war to ease maintenance. Mallard lost its valances during a works visit June 13, 1942, regaining them in preservation in 1963. Mallard was fitted with 12 boilers during its 25-year career. These boilers were, 9024, 8959, 8907, 8948, 8957, 29282, 29301, 29315, 29328, 29308, 29310 and 27965. Mallard has had 7 tenders throughout its career. It started off with a non-corridor tender in 1938, had corridor design tenders during its British Railways days and was fitted with a non-corridor tender in 1963 to recreate its original appearance. The tenders it has been fitted with are 5642, 5639, 5323, 5648, 5330, 5651 and 5670. The original non-corridor tender 5642 was later coupled to sister locomotive 60,026 miles Beaver when it was withdrawn on December 21, 1965 but later came into the possession of the A4 Preservation Society who had purchased this locomotive from the scrap yard to assist the restoration of classmate 4498 Sir Nigel Gresley. It was scrapped in 1973 as being surplus to requirements, by which time it had also donated parts to the restoration of A3 class locomotive 4472 Flying Scotsman, which had recently returned from America and was being restored at Derby workshops. Mallard was allocated to 3 sheds during its career, Doncaster, transferring on October 21, 1943 to Grantham and on April 11, 1948 to King's Cross. Class 2 A4s were exported after retirement, one to the USA Dwight D. Eisenhower, and the other to Canada Dominion of Canada. In October 2012, they came back to prepare for the 75th anniversary celebrations in 2013 of the record run. They and Mallard will be joined at the National Railway Museum by number 4464 Bittern, number 60007 Sir Nigel Gresley and number 60009 Union of South Africa. Number 60008 will have its BR Brunswick Green livery refreshed and number 60010 will be repainted in LNER Garter Blue with stainless steel lettering and numbers and fitted with a Canadian bell and whistle. Models: Bachmann and Hornby released models of Mallard several times in Garter Blue. Hornby released a model of Mallard in BR Express Passenger Blue and a limited edition model in BR Brunswick Green. Hornby will also release a limited edition model of 4468 in LNER form along with the other 5 surviving A4s in 2013. In popular culture, Mallard features in 2 of the later books Railway series by Christopher Awdry, Thomas and the Great Railway Show, and is also mentioned in Gordon the High-Speed Engine. Mallard also features in the Peters Railway book Surprise Goods by Christopher Vine, where she rescues a broken-down freight train. A painting of Mallard features on the 1993 Blur album Modern Life is Rubbish. The painting was a stock image that Style Origin Blur's design consultants obtained from a photo library in Halifax. According to Design Week magazine, the painting evoked the feel of a Just Williams schoolboy's pre-war Britain. The 2013 song East Coast Razor by British neo-prog band Big Big Train tells the story of Mallard's record-breaking run. On the popular US TV crime drama NCIS, a model of Mallard is a usual feature in some of the scenes that take place within the autopsy department. The model can usually be seen above the desk at the end of the room, and apparently belongs to Dr. Donald Ducky Mallard. Notes. See also, Land speed record for rail vehicles. References, Allon, Cecil J. The Locomotive Exchanges 1870–1948. Ian Allen Limited. A comprehensive book on locomotive exchanges, giving details of each trial and the locomotives involved. Body, M.G. Neve, E. Yeadon, W. B. Fry, E.V., ed. Part 2A, Tender Engines, Classes A1 to A10. Locomotives of the LNER Knilworth, RCTS. ISBN A0-900-1115-25-8. Clark, David. Locomotives in Detail, 3 Gresley 4-6-2A4 Class. Ian Allen Publishing. ISBN A0-7110-3085-5. An overall history of the Gresley A4 class, as well as unparalleled details about the class and individual members. Doherty, Douglas. Model Railways Locomotive Album. Kings Langley, Hertfordshire, Model and Allied Publications Limited. ISBN A0-85242-221-0. An eclectic mix of articles and photographs concerning British railways, trains and locomotives. Kerr, Michael. Last Call for the Dining Car. London, Orham Press Limited. ISBN A978-184513-770. A compendium of railway-related pieces from the Telegraph and Sunday Telegraph over many years. Fa, Keith. Practicing Performance. In Piggott, Nick. Railway Magazine 159. ISNA 0033-8923. The first and premier general railway interest magazine. Yeadon, W. B. Yeadon's Register of LNER Locomotives, Volume 2, Gresley A4 and W1 Classes. Buckler Rail Buses Association with Challenger. ISBN A1-871608-15-5. A histories of the A4 and W1 classes of locomotive with details of repairs and liveries etc. External links, National Railway Museum, Mallard at the Museum. A4 Pacific page in the LNER Encyclopedia.